Should women get extra days of leave in a year if they suffer from uncomfortable menstruation? If they suffer from pain, from discomfort, should there be more days of leave than what everyone else gets as an employee? This has been a question of long-standing debate. It was in the Supreme Court today, and while the Supreme Court says it does not want to get into it, it's a matter for the legislation, it definitely is up for debate, especially after a comment made by the Chief Justice of India, Justice Chandrachud. He was responding to something an intervener said in court, when he said that if you grant menstrual leave, employers will be hesitant to get women on board. Now, in a country which already has an abysmal labor participation of females, that sounds like a bad idea. Why would you want to disincentivize companies from hiring women? But look at this from the point of view of whether it's fair. Are our workplaces right now actually encouraging women to come in? For how long will women have to just grin and bear it, or pretend that they're not really suffering? Is that 10 or 12 days of sick leave that everyone gets enough if you have a serious condition? And when there are so many countries in the world which have accepted menstrual leave as a part of their policy, should India be left behind? That's what we're discussing today on the show. And to speak on this, I'm joined now by Chakroborty, co-founder and executive director at TeamLease, Lloyd Mathias Business Strategist, Karuna Nundy Advocate in the Supreme Court, Sonica, Aron, founder of Marching Sheep, and Advocate Shailendra Tripathi, the petitioner in the case. I'm actually going to begin the conversation with Advocate Tripathi, who went to court with this. Tripathi ji, बहुत-बहुत शुक्रिया हमारे साथ आज बात करने के लिए. आप पहले हमें ये समझाएं कि आप ये पिटिशन लेकर सुप्रीम कोर्ट क्यों गए? क्यों आपने ये मांग रखी कि महिलाएं और जो फीमेल स्टूडेंट्स हैं, लड़कियां हैं स्कूल कॉलेज में, उन्हें मेंस्ट्रुअल लीव अलग से मिलना चाहिए?
एक्चुअली मैंने ये समस्या शुरू में देखी थी अपने बचपन में. अपनी माँ को इस पेन से गुजरते हुए मैंने देखा था, और रिसेंटली मैं ट्रेन से यात्रा कर रहा था तो कोई फीमेल थी, उनको एंड्रोमेट्रोसिस कोई डिजीज होती है जो मेंस्ट्रुअल पेन से ही रिलेटेड है. उनके दर्द को देखा तो वो ट्रेन में थी, बहुत बेचैन थी. मैंने जानने की कोशिश की लेकिन वो कुछ कह नहीं पा रही थी. तो बाद में मैंने इस चीज़ का अध्ययन किया तो पता चला कि ये दर्द हार्ट अटैक जैसा दर्द होता है. इन्हीं सब चीज़ों से मैं प्रभावित होकर सुप्रीम कोर्ट में मैंने रिट फाइल की, और अपने आसपास के लोगों को मैंने देखा था, जहां मैंने ये समझने की कोशिश की आखिर इस तरीके के पेन कुछ लोगों को ज़्यादा होते हैं. तो इसके रिगार्डिंग मैंने इस समस्या का सॉल्यूशन ढूंढना चाहा, और मैंने उसी को आगे बढ़ाते हुए मैंने सुप्रीम कोर्ट में रिट फाइल किया.
तो अब आप को कैसे ये बात आप आगे ले जाएंगे, जबकि सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने इस मामले में दखल देने से मना कर दिया है, कहा है कि आप वुमेन एंड चाइल्ड मिनिस्ट्री के पास चले जाइए, तो आपका अगला कदम क्या होगा?
जैसा कि ऑनरेबल चीफ जस्टिस ऑफ इंडिया ने अपने ऑर्डर में ऑर्डर किया है कि आप रिप्रेजेंटेशन गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया को थ्रू वुमेन एंड चाइल्ड मिनिस्ट्री को आप रिप्रेजेंटेशन दें, और ये पॉलिसी डोमेन का मामला है, सरकार कंसीडर करेगी इस बात को. और पिटीशन को डिस्पोज ऑफ किया है तो पहले सर्टिफाइड कॉपी हमारे हाथ में आ जाएगी, फिर उसको मैं गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया को मैं रिप्रेजेंट करूंगा उसको लेके. फिर उसके बाद अगर जैसा भी सरकार डिसीजन लेती है उसके बाद फिर अगली क्या कार्रवाई होगी सोचेंगे, क्योंकि ये एक ऐसा पेन है जो हम सबकी जिम्मेदारी बनती है. कोई किसी की माँ है, कोई बहन है, कोई पत्नी है, कोई बेटी है, और ये समस्या एक बायोलॉजिकल समस्या है. फीमेल इस चीज़ को सफ़र कर रही है, तो इस चीज़ को जिस तरह से हमें आगे बढ़ाना होगा, हमारी पूरी कोशिश रहेगी आगे बढ़ाने की.
शुक्रिया त्रिपाठी जी आपकी बातों के लिए और आपके इस प्रयास के लिए कि आप सामने वाले पर क्या बीत रही है वो समझने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं. Now let's come to the real impact of this, and I'm going to start with Karuna Nundy. Ms. Nundy, the concern that the Chief Justice of India has also echoed, and it was someone intervening in the case who first said it, but this is not a new argument, that if you impose an additional leave, employers, especially of small businesses, not large multinationals who have CSR targets, etc., but those of small businesses will say that let me avoid employing women because now I will have to give them additional leaves.
I think it's important to look at the petition itself first. While I congratulate Mr. Tripathi for taking the initiative, the petition itself, unfortunately, says that Article 14 applies. The main argument is that Article 14 applies. And Tripathi ji, आप correct कीजिएगा अगर हमने कुछ inaccurate कहा कि किसी स्टेट में है और किसी स्टेट में नहीं है. इसीलिए constitutional equality as per Article 14 apply करता है in view of federalism. I beg your pardon. Now, this isn't a correct interpretation of Article 14. You see? So this may have been the problem with regard to the disposal of the petition. And then the rest of it could have just been conversation around it. So this is something to look out for. This would mean that while the bench has made its inclination known, it's possible that another petition might succeed. I don't know. I'm not a soothsayer.
Yeah. But
that's something important to recognize.
But Ms. Nundy, that's the legal part of it. The fact is, in a sense that the Supreme Court is right when they say it's a legislative decision to make. Furthermore, it is actually a policy that companies need to implement. And that is where it gets stuck. Companies are also ruining that they have to give maternity benefits of up to 6 months. We have one of the highest in the world.
That's a good point.
They're cribbing about this as well.
Absolutely. They're also cribbing very much about the requirements of having a policy around the prevention of sexual harassment, right? Now, we have to remember that in pre-1997, it was not specifically banned, sexual harassment. And then in 1997, as per Vishakha, as you of course know, the Supreme Court said that, look, it is a woman's fundamental right under Article 19(1)G, which is the right to work, as well as the right to a life with dignity, to be free from sexual harassment. So companies need to set up these Vishakha committees, have policies, have workshops to prevent this. So I guess the question that one has is that could a constitutional court in such a matter do something similar? In my view, they could, because where we have a fundamental right, where there is women, all women have menstruation. Some women have very painful, a large proportion of women, in fact, not the majority, but a large proportion, have quite painful menstruation. Now, there are models out there in terms of Spain, for example, which says that you have to produce a doctor's certificate, right? Yes, it would be far preferable for the government to legislate it, but in the absence of legislation, can we say that companies should be allowed to place burdens on women that are unfair? Now, I'm saying that this does need additional thought, because where you have chronic illness like cancer, or where you have other kinds of chronic illness that are akin to endometriosis and allow you to work, but don't allow you to work in the same way all 30 days of the year, should it be extended to that? So that is a question that I can see maybe weighing in people's minds. And of course, a policy decision is always better left to the legislature. But if the legislature fails to take a decision, right, in a matter of fundamental rights, that is merely a neutral fact as per Justice Nariman in
Also the point
other.
that the petition makes. Bihar, for example, has had a policy of menstrual leave. Some companies have a policy of menstrual leave. There should be an equal playing field for women across India, and then there is no question or no sort of clarity on what happens to those going to school, college, taking competitive exams, etc. Let me get in Rituparna Chakraborty.
That doesn't work as a legal argument.
Sure. Let me get... This is beyond, I think, the remit of legal. The beginning of our talk point... The beginning of our talk point is the legal argument, but this is also a question... Tripathi ji, मैं आ रही हूँ आपके पास. This is also a question of what we want to do and stand for as a society. Tripathi ji, मैं आऊँगी आपके पास. मुझे और राय ले लेने दीजिए. Rituparna Chakraborty, co-founder and executive director of TeamLease, is also with us. And, Rituparna, I'm keen to know your views on what this means in real terms, because the companies who have come forward with specific leave policies, and there are several of them in India as well, they get great headlines, they get, the claps and the good reviews. But practically, do you actually see this concern playing out, that less women will be hired if menstrual leave becomes a policy in this country?
So I've been thinking how to respond to this whole debate without sounding insensitive for a while to the cause of women. But I think we have to keep in mind that India is at the bottom pretty much in terms of labor workforce participation, right? And some people might make an argument of the pandemic, but it's a fact that over the last 1 year, women labor workforce participation has deteriorated from earlier years. We have this looming impact of Maternity Benefit Act, which I don't think corporate India and women in general have not been able to get over yet. Clearly, some of our studies suggest that it has acted as a deterrent in terms of hiring women. Now, the thing is that there are many issues ahead of women in terms of improving women workforce participation. And I'm not being at all insensitive as a woman myself about the problems that women go through because of the pains associated with the entire debate of menstruation. But I think we need to really pick our battles. And I personally feel that there is so much more that we have to do in terms of getting women rightfully into the workplace and in work of dignity, because India is struggling with more women in the informal sector where they have really no rights at all. I mean, forget menstrual leave, they don't even have a washroom or a loo or access. So I think we really need to step back and think about the materiality.
Is it an either or, Rituparna? Is it an either or?
Well, I personally feel that we all have to pick our choice. I mean, this is a matter of choice. It's about 10 things that have to be done for women, but it's always going to be a prioritization game, Tamanna. We can't expect all 10 to come our way. So it's about which one are you going to pick and prioritize and which one you're going to drop out. I personally feel we have to make every effort to make every woman out there who's joining the workforce into the formal sector. And anything at this point, there is a quantity problem. Let's solve the quantity problem before we move into the quality problem. And anything which acts as a deterrent, we have to weigh our options very carefully. Again, my heart goes out to all the women, and I've seen my friends, I've seen many people who have gone through this. But, well, one sliver of hope is that, and of course, it's for those who have the liberty and the flexibility. We today have work from home, and employers are far more liberal.
You know what, Rituparna? You fall back, you lose out because of something that you can't help. And is it not society's, responsibility as well to take everyone along? Isn't this a form of discrimination?
No, actually, look, just pardon me on this front, but yes, it is something that some women go through, first and foremost, and not all women go through. Similarly, I mean, let's not make this a gender issue, because there could be some chronic ailments that even the other gender goes through. So it actually opens up a Pandora's box. And I heard that there were comparisons made with countries abroad. I went through the list, Tamanna. Most of these countries are where women labor workforce participation is not a challenge. I have not seen anyone which is within the vicinity of 10, 12 ranks or 20 ranks of India where something like this is getting executed on an ongoing basis and successfully. So without impacting the ability for employers to hire more women. So, but anyway, I may be making an hypothesis. Maybe it's all my apprehension. Maybe it's not really the case.
No,
but from the way I have seen,
because you have real life experience when you speak to companies who want to recruit. Has anyone come to you and said that, oh, I don't want to hire women because they might get painful periods, they might have children, they might have babies?
No one will explicitly say that, but everyone has a choice of not selecting.
Oh. Okay, Sonica, Aron, I want your response to this. We'll get everyone's comments once and then we'll open up the debate. Yes, Sonica, Aron.
So, thank you, Tamanna. And, there are a lot of things which Karuna ji said and Ritu said. So, first and foremost, to put the numbers right, 1 in 10 women have endometriosis, which is a significant number. And endometriosis is extremely debilitating. 70% women have dysmenorrhea, which is mild to severe discomfort in first 2 days of periods. But endometriosis is debilitating. I am one of the women who experience neither, but I have seen women around me, friends, relatives who have gone through it, taken painkillers and hot water bottles and whatnot, and nothing's worked. Now, this starts from early teenage years till they hit menopause. Now, this is a good 40-45 years. Now, coming to whether it should be done or it should not be done. And now, while we can't take the decision here, I do believe that when it becomes a talking point, when it becomes something which needs to be done, it starts to change mindsets. Karuna ji spoke about Vishakha guidelines. Ma'am, I started my career in 2001 and there was no POSH. And trust me, I worked with the best of MNCs and none of those organizations were talking or making people aware about Vishakha guidelines. We had to fend for ourselves. So until and unless there is an act which is mandated, organizations will not do anything.
Yeah.
Now coming to, sorry.
No, why don't you finish?
Yeah, thank you. Now coming to this issue about leave, I think the issue is with the word, so just let me complete. The issue is with the word leave, maternity leave, period leave. When women go on maternity leave, it's not like they are Netflixing or binging or having They are taking care of babies. They are up all night. They are practically going through a lot of.
एक मिनट त्रिपाठी जी, आप सबको बोल देने दीजिए, फिर हम डिबेट को खोल देंगे. सबको एक बार अपनी बात बोल देने दीजिए.
जब पीरियड लीव भी अगर कोई लेगा
एक्चुअली वो लॉ क्या है वो मैं क्लियर करना चाह रहा था.
हाँ, हम आएंगे आपके पास जी.
तो जब कोई पीरियड लीव भी अगर कोई लेगा तो वो अपनी हेल्थ के लिए लेगा, आराम के लिए लेगा. अगर किसी को लगता है कि उससे काम पे फर्क पड़ेगा तो ये एक माइंडसेट इशू है. वी नीड टू पुट एनीथिंग व्हिच नीड्स टू बी इम्प्लीमेंटेड इन लेटर एंड स्पिरिट.
राइट.
So that spirit needs to be surrounded by enabling procedures like, why does it have to be a person available at work to be evaluated for work? Why can it not be on the basis of what are they contributing? When we do sessions on sensitization and people say that they will go for 6 months on maternity leave, and we say that what if somebody a male has a accident, or like she spoke about cancer? Will you not, irrespective of gender, support that person? And this is not a women issue only. Any person who has a uterus, this can also be a transgender person or an intersex person.
Right. So I got your point, Sonica, Aron, that you're saying that this should be there. You know, since you spoke about endometriosis and all of y'all have spoken about endometriosis. It is debilitating. I know, because I have suffered from it. I've taken treatment from it. I've had surgery for it. And I'm saying this on national TV today, but I have been blessed to have worked with companies and leaders who have understood and not let that hold me back. And that is very, very crucial. That you look at an individual for what they contribute, not whether they have a uterus or not. Because you brought it up, I thought I should share that. Lloyd, please come in on this debate. Should the worth of an individual be brought down to what their gender is and only what they're contributing maybe to your P&L?
Certainly not, Tamanna, and thank you for that interesting share. I think the reality is that we all need to make our workplaces more inclusive, and to that extent, we have to also take into account the biological differences, the fact that there is a need. Having said which, I just want to go back to a point that Rituparna made. I think with the fact that while large companies, should this be legislated, will easily fall in line and be able to handle it, I think the challenge comes is in the mindsets of smaller companies and early stage companies who this, let's say a female employee, technically being on leave 24 more days annually at an average of 2 days a month would be an impediment. So the reality of the issue is that smaller companies may keep this as a trade-off. And exactly as you said, it's the larger companies who take this along because for them, DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, ESG metrics are relevant for their stakeholders. But for smaller companies, where this tends to be a little borderline, will always be a pushback.
I just want to read out the list of companies that Mr. Tripathi's petition mentions, and I'm quoting from his petition, which I've given this. This, of course, includes Swiggy, Zomato, Byju's, Culture Machine, Maxter, Matrubhumi, Wet and Dry, Industry ARZ, Horses Table News, Fly My Biz, JaipurKurti.com, Orient Electric. There are a lot of companies here who are not in your, Fortune 500.
So all I'd say, Tamanna, is that these are certainly enlightened companies, and I have absolutely no doubt it could go down the spectrum. It's not necessarily a Fortune 500, but I would say that there are a lot of other companies, maybe larger, family-driven concerns that may be listed companies that may have reservations. And like Rituparna rightly said, they might not explicitly state it so, but this could impact their hiring. And at every stage of this woman's journey, right from when POSH guidelines were issued, when, let's say, India went from the 3 months to 6 months on maternity leave, I think there have been issues of a little pushback. So I want us to recognize that aspect. While I'm all for the fact that we have to make our workplaces more inclusive, I think this could be a negative impact of that, and that's the reality that I want us to accept. Long term, I think legislating would be a solution.
I'm going to open up the debate, but I just want to, understand, how do you think that it's okay to discriminate against someone because they have painful periods, and where does that end? Tomorrow, what if a company says, I will not hire someone who's obese because they might take a lot of sick leave and their health might be bad? I will not hire a smoker. They will take a lot of smoking breaks.
That's an excellent point.
So it's discrimination. Let's talk about what it is and not, beat around the bush. This is a form of discrimination. Yes, Karuna.
When we speak about incentivizing companies or not incentivizing companies to not discriminate, then should we be speaking in terms of incentives, or should we be speaking in terms of not being allowed to discriminate and enabling them to comply with the law? At the moment, we don't have an equality law. An equality law was floated, in fact, by Shashi Tharoor because he is willing to float these private members' bills, and the person behind it was Karuna Nundy from Oxford, who's done decades of work on this. And the non-discrimination law sets
law
out.
Already hai.
नहीं जी नहीं है, मुझे खत्म करने दीजिए. So the non-discrimination entire structures of law, right, exist in England, they exist in the United States, and they do not exist here. So you can go to an entire structure within your company and say that somebody has sexually harassed me. If they stroke your shoulder and say, oh, you're so hot, right? You can go under Section 354. of the, because it's criminal sexual assault. But if somebody shouts at you and says that you are stupid because you're a woman and I'm going to fire you, right? Then the morass of law that you have to draw on, you have to sort of make a case based on contract, based on Article 14. Please let me finish.
Yeah.
Based on Article 14, etc. I'm just finishing my point. The thing is, though, is that we need a structure of law that says that you can't discriminate. Spain also pays those 3 days if you provide a doctor's certificate. The government pays for it. Now, of course, these structural issues in terms of burdening women with childcare, with their own pain due to endometriosis, etc., is a huge problem and needs to be taken off just women. So that structural problem is something that should be looked at as a whole and is something that is preventing women from joining the workforce. So these are not contrary issues. These are actually entwined issues.
Rituparna, do you want to respond to the gamut of, views that have come in?
I think I'm all in favor of having a workplace which is equitable for women and is non-discriminatory in nature. But I think I'm coming at it from a practical perspective about how to go about it. I honestly believe that there are bigger problems that women are grappling with, which is impending their coming to workforce, informal workforce, and we will. So let's stay focused on those. I'm not saying we should let this narrative die down. Let's not let the narrative die down on things like this, because what Sonica rightly said is that at least if we keep talking about it at some point, but I don't think it's the right time to push for legislation right now, because that's a scary point. I mean, that's when you're saying that somebody's pointing a gun at my head, and that's when employers start reacting differently. I feel that we have to keep this debate and narrative on.
But it's of no use then, Rituparna. It's of no use then. At the end of the day, it's of no use. You're at the mercy, like I just spoke a few minutes ago. You're at the mercy, or it's your draw of luck. Do you work in a place? Do you work in a place or with a manager who is understanding of your situation? If you don't, what are you going to do?
For example, Tamanna, POSH essentially is of much bigger impact than what the issue that we are talking about. And the POSH is also not something which happened just like that, one fine day. It took years of marination and debate and conversation. So I'm saying at this point of time, let's keep the debate on. But the moment you'll push for legislation, it will have adverse impact on women, the very women that we are expecting to protect right now. It's not going to be in favor of them.
Should that be okay? 1 minute. Sonica, Aron, should that be okay to say that if you give special leave for menstrual pain for women, then people will stop hiring them? That's essentially what it boils down to. Should that be okay today? It's like saying that if you ask someone to, give special provisions for those who are differently abled, they will not hire them. Then how do you move towards an equal workplace and an inclusive workplace? And this is 50% of the population.
So, Tamanna, there has always been a backlash. There was backlash after POSH as well, if you remember. We cannot give feedback in behind closed doors. If I give a feedback, I don't know, she will raise a complaint against me. It happened after, we extended maternity leave from 3 months to 6 months. There will always be a backlash. Are all organizations implementing POSH the way it should be implemented? Hand on heart? No. Right? We've had that creche policy. How many organizations are really having creche today? So I think you need to have a legislation, or you need to have some guidelines, something which at least forces people to start having a conversation. It removes the stigma. Please understand that today the workforce demographic is changing. 52% of our workforce is zillennial and millennial, who are very, very woke. By 2025, 27% will be zillennials who will not shy away from talking about periods. Today, when you go to a washroom, and I'm talking about small companies where they don't even want to keep a toilet paper in the washroom because the budgets are out. So I'm talking about that at least have a conversation.
The conversation so is happening. Rituparna is also saying have a conversation. She's saying don't bring legislation.
But Tamanna, conversation is happening on TV. Please go and have a conversation with the CEO and the HR heads of, you listed out 12 companies. What about the other organizations?
They are not going to do it unless there's a push. That's the point. Okay. Yes, Lloyd, please come in on this. If we're waiting for companies to start looking at inclusive workplaces to actually make women feel more comfortable, in fact, increase their participation in the labor force, because of this, is it going to happen without legislation?
No, it's not just about...
One sec, Lloyd. Questions to Lloyd.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to happen without legislation. But I think the fact that companies will have to take this into account, and maybe not a mandate, but a lot of enlightened companies will begin to accept, now with this conversation going mainstream, I think a lot of companies will have to accept the reality of a gender inclusive workspace. Having said this, Tamanna, I want to re-emphasize the fact that a lot of companies, when they look at their labor output, will factor this in. So as much as we want to keep that out, the idea is not to make the workplace discriminatory, but the fact is companies are also looking at productivity target.
Okay, I just want to come to that. I want to understand how they will factor it in, because it is not necessary that because you provide this opportunity, it will be taken every month by every woman. It's like your 6-month maternity leave. If you have 50% of your workforce as women, they're not all going to go on maternity leave together at the same time. So everyone is not going to have a painful period and have to take that leave every month all at the same time. How will you factor it in? Is it actually going to be a very big factor at the end of the day in the number of hours lost?
I'm not sure it's going to be a very big factor, but it's certainly going to be a significant factor.
No, it's not. It is not.
No,
if you know how women's periods work, it's not.
Tamanna, there are professions where employees maintain a time log. The company bills its client basis the amount of time an employee spends. In an organization that is predominantly women, if this legislation were to be passed, then you're actually having to factor that you might need to employ more people to deliver the same amount of resources to your client in terms of time. And that's a hard number. That's what the markets are going to recognize when they evaluate.
I want you to come in, on that point that Lloyd is making. Suppose you have professions that bill by the hour. I think legal counsel is one of them. So if you have today, if you have a lot of women employees, and if they have to take menstrual leave, does it impact your business, or will it impact your billing?
So we have small teams of in chambers, right? So we have lawyers working with us, not as employees, but as the Advocates Act and the Bar Council rules require, we have retainerships. Now, it's all a bit ad hoc, and the way we work is that if it's, if there's pain and you need leave, then you get leave, right? Does it impact productivity? I actually think that if you take away, if people are feeling well and not having to put in FaceTime at work unnecessarily. So we have very frequently, when it's possible, a hybrid way of working. When you have to go to court, you have to go to court. We have particular office days. But we find that productivity is just much better when people are feeling well and they're happier, right? Plus, in the past, in the sort of long past prior, I have worked in workplaces where you have to go between a particular time and a particular time, and you have to put in a certain amount of face time, and there are days during which only little bits of work, let's face it, right? Bits of work that happen. Now we hear a lot of people saying that, oh, I have a lot of sympathy with people who go through a hard time, and let's focus on other issues. What are these other issues? Yes, we have huge numbers of people in the informal workforce. For them, with regard to the Prevention of the Sexual Harassment Act, there are local area committees that need to be set up. Most have not been set up by the government. These are incredibly important to be set up. Now it's become acceptable to say that companies will not be allowed to discriminate regardless of whether this incentivizes or disincentivizes them to fire women, right? They cannot fire women because they want to sexually harass them. Let's be clear about that. Why is that? Because there is a law. So where does that bring us in terms of period leave? I'm not saying that the question of period leave is entirely clear-cut, because should the person who has another kind of chronic disability not get the same leave? Perhaps they should. It's very difficult in my workplace, for example, and in other workplaces to have the kind of work-life balance that I think that, we should be moving towards in life, because law is a very, very demanding profession. However, in a situation where you have the kind of female workforce participation rate, where we have brilliant anchors like you who have been enabled to rise to the top because of employers who understand that you have to deal with particular types of you have to support people who are dealing with particular types of issues in order to unlock the massive contribution that the women of our country should be bringing and to the table. Let us look at this in terms of a cost-benefit analysis and the way the economy is losing out because the government is failing to support women in the workforce in multiple ways.
Rituparna, I want your response to that. If you allow people to take time off when they are in pain, will they not eventually be more productive? Will you not, in the longer run, be actually unlocking potential? If someone has a 20, 30-year career, if they take 1 or 2 6-month leaves to bear children, equivalent of a few days or maybe equivalent of a month of painful period leave, does it make a difference, or is it better to just cut them out?
Actually, you gave me the perfect, you've become the perfect example. Actually, the moment you said that you've been blessed to work with employers who actually understood the problem and the challenge you were going through, that's what we need to focus on. I think we've made this debate of actually announcing that every employer out there actually are currently denying women who genuinely have a problem. And I think there is a problem with that assumption. I do believe that, and I kind of agree with Lloyd, this is a problem that you will have with uninformed employers who are not that progressive, who are not understanding the value that women bring to the workplace, who are not understanding the thousands of studies which actually say how women economically can be highly beneficial for organizations. So, but then there are a lot of evolved organizations that are already there, and hence there is an ecosystem where I don't think an employer today who's actually seeing what a woman is doing at workplace for a genuine case will deny such an option. So that's what I'm saying, that if there is a huge case where there is a large list of organizations who are currently denying employees, then yes, we will be talking in a different forum.
Will we ever know, and can we leave it to the goodness of heart of certain individuals? Like I said, I've been lucky to go through the process of starting a family, go through the process of an illness. I've had those kind of managers in workplaces, and I'm still here. But does everyone have that same opportunity, and shouldn't they have the same opportunity? That really is food for thought. I want to wrap this here, but I want to thank all of you for joining us on the debate today.
Oh, hello, sir.
Hello.